Good morning, everyone. I'm Stacy Weber. I'm an instructor here at Pragmatic Marketing, and I'd like to welcome you to this month's edition of Pragmatic Live. This month's webinar is focused on mapping the sales trail, and we have Jan Triplett here with us today. You can follow this conversation live at the hashtag shown on your screen. And throughout the session, if you have questions, you can go ahead and type those into your into your ReadyTalk interface, and we'll sort through those questions and answer them as we can. Thank you much for joining us today. At Pragmatic Marketing, we're focused on helping companies learn how to gather good, factual market evidence and how to enable the internal teams using that market evidence. So today's webinar is really looking at using that market evidence to help increase the effectiveness and efficiency within the sales organization. With that, I'll turn this over to Jan.
Thank you, Stacy, so much. I'm really pleased to be here. I've had the pleasure of working with Pragmatic in an event we have in Austin that's in other parts of the country called Product Camp. And the thing that I like, Stacy, the most about Pragmatic Marketing is that you are organized and you have a specific way to address all of the issues that we deal with as marketers and salespeople. I wanted to show a little picture of me so that even though you can't see me in person, this is me. And no, I do not have funny little things coming out of the back of my head, but we do act as guides and mentors and advocates for businesses to help them grow. And so I wanted you to see who you were listening to, and then I want to run the next slide, which is going to let you tell me about you. So if you wouldn't mind, would you please let me know what your job function is primarily? Are you a business owner, team leader, or team member? And if you'll fill that in for me, I'd appreciate it. What this does is really helps make sure that I give you examples that are relevant to who you are and what you're doing. When we think about sales mapping, some of you may already be doing that, and that's one of the questions I'm going to be asking you. But it's really important to be thinking about this as a process. Just like the Pragmatic has all of the components to help you put the pieces together, both strategic and tactical, this is really on the tactical end. And so I'm going to be talking to most of you as team members, but I'm not going to forget those of you who are like me, who are the CEO or the business owner and the team leader. Most of what I'm going to be talking about is kind of giving you an idea of how it works and not really trying to teach you how to do it, but to show you what you can do if you take some time and effort. And it isn't easy. So I have provided an opportunity for you to work with me afterwards if you'd like to. So if you would fill in this second piece, which is who does your organization primarily sell to? Businesses or consumers? And the last group, you may not think that that makes a difference, but certainly when we're talking about sales mapping, because of the way that government operates and nonprofits and other kinds of tax exempts, there are some reasons that you change your sales mapping just a little bit. So if you would fill that out for me, I would very much appreciate it, because that, again, lets me know the examples to use with you. My understanding is that you all are involved in, there's my Texas coming up, you all are involved in tech marketing. And so I'm going to be using tech examples, but I'm going to be talking about other kinds of examples as well, because that's helpful depending upon where you end up or the kinds of things that you might add to what you're marketing. So most of you are doing B2B. That's what I focus on, obviously, in what I do at the Business Success Center as an advocate and a strategist. And here's what we're going to be talking about. We're really going to be looking at how you can use mapping to shorten your sales cycle. It's easy to come up with techniques, but it helps to really see where you are, and that's what sales mapping does. It's kind of a picture's worth 1,000 words kind of idea. And when you sales map, you really get ways to reduce your costs. And for those of you who are team members, you're certainly on the line to help bring those costs under control and to make sure that your product marketing and product management are very effective. And this is a way for you to have a double check. It's a way for you to plan ahead, to spot problems, look for customers to avoid, and we're going to talk about those in a minute, and really look at the tactics to emphasize. Please do make sure that if you have questions that you do let me know if I'm going too fast, because I have a lot to cover. And what I want to do is to, again, give you some examples and talk about them briefly with the option for you to talk to me later. We're going to be looking at these 4 to 5 different maps. The reason I said 4 to 5 is because the location intelligence map, which is the last one, is not a map that you are probably going to be able to do yourself. It really takes some sort of a software system to do that. But these 4 are ones that you can do, and that's what I'm going to really emphasize. When I talk about sales mapping, I am talking about how it works not only in service businesses, but also in product businesses. And you may be thinking about this, well, I can see how it might work in a service business. You've probably seen examples of it in other kinds of situations where a service was looking for a group of people around a certain area, and they use the sales map to target those people. But frequently what happens, and this is one of the reasons that I got involved in doing sales mapping, is because it's possible to end up with a sales plan that kind of looks like this. It's really pretty, but it has sort of no organization, and it's not really a good guide for people in terms of moving forward with product management or product marketing. There can also be a real problem when it comes to time, because when you have limited time like we all do, is how do we use it most effectively? How do we make it our friend? And we make it our friend by using a sales map to target. It's as if we were going from Austin, where I live, to Chicago. And instead of thinking about all the wonderful little things that are in between, is we're going to focus on where we're going to stop to get gas, where we're going to stop to eat, where we're going to stop for the night. And that helps us make the time go faster and used better, because we know what our goals are. And I'm sure all of you are very goal-driven. And the thing about sales mapping is that it makes time your friend. Now, none of you probably have a list that looks like this, and these are just examples of names that we made up. But I want you to see that sometimes, and I have worked with sales teams and marketing teams where it wasn't all at funny little angles, but they certainly didn't have any kind of priority list except sometimes what the sales manager thought it should be or what they were directed, but they didn't have any rationale to go behind that. And sometimes it was just a list, just like this one. And this is not for you to read. It's just to kind of say, oh my gosh, how can I use this as a tool to market or manage my products or services when I've just got a list of names and information. Sales mapping is going to help you fix that. The last piece that makes sales mapping really valuable is to really concentrate on the kinds of customers that you and the company that you work for or that you own want you to. And there are really 3 key areas that you can use as a sales goal option. Those that are most lucrative, in other words, that they bring in the most money. Now, not one sale at a time, but in total. Most successful, they're the easiest to get to. They may be niches or things of that sort. And this last one is most valuable. That's a combination of these 2. And what you want to do is, when you're looking at creating a sales map, which we're going to get to in a minute, is to not be overwhelmed. And what I put here is not something necessarily that I expect you to read other than to go, oh, are those all the options? Because that's really what this is to show you, so that you could have a sales map or a process that looked for the least valuable, least accessible, but they were also the least lucrative. And you certainly don't want those people. But you could also see that as you go down this list is that you get to most valuable, but they have other characteristics. And by looking at who they are and where they fit, you begin to prioritize and decide that this is really somebody to go after, and this is what we're going to talk about in terms of a sales ring. Wouldn't it be nice if you could have something like this? This is a client called Intuvi, and I have a link for you. They are a GPS GIS company, and this is the kind of example I was talking about. Wouldn't it be nice if we could take that list and just turn it into these little stars so we'd know where clients are and we'd look at the characteristics about them? And when you use sales mapping, that's where you're trying to end up. Maybe not something quite as formal as this unless you're in certain kind of situations. But it really uses this concept called location intelligence. And most of you are probably familiar with business intelligence. If you ever bought anything from Amazon, they're always offering you things that are related. That's from business intelligence. They know what you buy. If any of you are in the healthcare area, you may know that one of the new things that is being offered is for hospitals and healthcare facilities to be able to see, how sick you are, what you use, and things of that sort, so they can encourage you to come in and have that appendectomy or that tonsillectomy or whatever it is you need. What they're doing is they are using the same kinds of things that people in other kinds of traditional businesses use for location intelligence and business intelligence. When we try to make sales mapping work, we have to be willing to be the judge. And that's really talking about the fact that all customers are not created equal. And so we have all kinds of judges judging all kinds of things, and that's part of your job as a sales marketer and a sales manager or as a team member of those, is really to make those judgments. Now the judgments have to end up with somebody being willing to be the final judge and the final jury. But if you're going to use sales mapping as a technical technique, you want to make sure that you're focusing on the buyer. Now, you notice it says buyer as a person. And the reason that we say buyer as a person, and I'm just going to highlight that word, is because sometimes, particularly when we're doing business to business, we think of, well, I'm doing business with Dell. Well, some of you may know that Dell is located in Austin, Texas. Some of you may know that there is a person called Michael Dell. So when people tell me that they're doing business with Dell, I say Michael or Susan. Susan is his wife. When we think about it, every sale as a person, then the sales map is much easier to do because we're not thinking about it in terms of this big group of something that is kind of squishy and we can't get our arms around. Looking at a person is the key thing. And I know that from talking to the people at Pragmatic, that's something they emphasize to you over and over again. And I just want to reiterate that that's exactly right, is the sales map and all of the things that you do in terms of product management and product marketing really focus on that buyer as a person. That's why we talk about usability and user experience, etc. We do have to, in order to make sales mapping work, have agreement that everyone won't buy from you. There is no such thing as a magic bullet. When I was in school working on my PhD, one of the things they emphasized is there is no mass market. There is a market of one at a time, hopefully groups that make it easier. To make this work, you really want to have some consistency. This doesn't work if you are or work with hip shooters. And there's nothing wrong with hip shooters. Some of the best marketing and salespeople sort of do it on the fly. They seem to have the instincts to do it, but most of us don't come that way. We don't have those traits. We're not that skilled. And so using a sales map as part of your sales process and as part of your marketing process and using some of the things that you learn at Pragmatic is going to give you that opportunity to create consistency with your other team members and to really help everybody grow. You do have to be willing to track and keep up the maps. If you're not willing to do that, you don't have time to do that, this is never going to work. And finally, you have to have a decision maker, somebody who says the buck stops here and says this is the decision we're making and then enforces that. When we don't have a decision maker, things kind of get away from us, and it may be one thing one day and one another. I worked with a software company that provides help with timekeeping. And one of the things that they worked on was really creating consistency as they brought their sales process in-house. They had been doing a lot of their lead generation out of house. And sales mapping allows you to, again, make sure that everybody's on the same page and doing it the same way. What we want to use the sales mapping to do that is to tell us what or who and when and why and how much will they pay. That's part of what you should be able to get out of your sales map. You should also be able to use it and share it with others, and it should influence their decisions. So one of the things about sales mapping is that you have to be able to work well with all of these other departments that might not be related to you, or there might be too many silos going on. The nice thing about sales mapping is it works for everybody, whether you're talking about online or bricks and mortar. We just had a new law that was passed by our city council that they're very proud of, which allows mobile shops. I've always known about mobile shops from the Snap-on tool guys who were walking around out of their truck. But apparently we have a new kind of business-to-business that we're looking at, which is a mobile business that's not a food cart. So what I'd like to ask you now is, how do you use sales mapping techniques in any way? So if you would please fill out this little poll for me, that's going to let me know if I'm talking to people who use it. So we have a number of people who've never used sales mapping. Maybe you use something else that works well. And if you do, I hope that you will send me a note and let me know what you're using that helps you do what I'm talking about in sales mapping. When we look at the result of doing the sales map, is we look at the analytics that come with it. And again, this may sound like kind of redundant, but I want to say this again, is this issue of consistency and repeatability. Because if we're doing it right, we want to repeat it. If we're not doing it right, we want to know that it isn't working, and so we can make some changes. What a sales map should allow you to do is to give you the analytics so that you can predict. I wrote a post. I write for allbusiness.com, and I wrote a post on basically why sales forecasts are always wrong. And sometimes it's always wrong just because people are kind of giving somebody what they want to hear. Sometimes it's simply because they don't have enough information. And a sales map can help you do that. Because what it does, it evaluates how you're doing now and looking, if you use it properly, how you did it historically and what to change, and how to maintain both short and long-term profitability. Your focus might be right now on most lucrative clients because you need large amounts of capital to attract funding sources or all kinds of strategic allies. It might be in terms of getting your numbers up because we're at the end of the month. We really are at the end of the month on June 30th. As I said, we can talk about most lucrative and we can talk about most accessible. And most lucrative, again, is not one sale at a time. It's really talking about over a period of time. Now that choice of time, I talked about being friend or foe, is up to you all to decide. But I certainly recommend that you're looking at it over a year's time or in comparison. Particularly you're talking about a business-to-business sale. I have a client and he provides a software as a service, and it's a monthly thing, but every year people have to renew. So he's looking not only at the people who are buying on a monthly basis and paying the maintenance and support, but who renews. And so for him, that's a critical thing to map. Now, most accessible, I'm going to use him as the same example again, is because he provides a product that is an add-on to another product, specifically in this case for the nonprofit community. And so it's accessible. It's easy to get to them together. He's a client of mine, and we do webinars for the clients of our clients. And that makes it very easy. And so in terms of sales mapping, we're able to move forward and make the map accurate, to use it to predict, etc. The key to me is whoever you choose, and whether you choose the lucrative or the accessible or the most valuable, which is a combination, is to make sure that when you're doing your sales mapping, you're really looking for not the maybes, not the no's, but the yeses. And I will tell you, having been in this area for a long time, is that if people make any mistake in terms of product marketing and product management, is that they forget that these are the people who pay the bills. And people get kind of beside themselves is, I want to convince people. I want to convince the no's. I want to engage with the maybes. And if for those of you who are sales managers or market managers, is you need to keep your team focused on the yeses. And that way really leads to that long-term profitability and less waste and less mistakes. And the sales map can help you say, these are the people who are most likely to say yes. Different kinds of customers. You all are doing, most of you are doing business to business, but you can see when we're talking about sales mapping, we could be dealing with all kinds of individuals, doing all kinds of things. And when you look at a map, you're not probably talking about one map, you're talking about several. But the point about the sales map, this is the first of the maps that we're going to be looking at, is that it goes from beautiful green, where the money is, down to radioactive waste, the red ones. And what we want to do is to really begin to put in these holes, and I'm going to show you an example in a minute, of who you feel really belongs there. And obviously, if you are new to business, you may not know the names of specific people to put there, but if you have a history, you do have some. These radioactive waste, or what we call raw customers, sometimes are the customers you love the most. They are dear and wonderful, and they love you to death. They just are impossible to deal with. And I was meeting with a client yesterday, and she was talking about finally saying to a client that had actually was a lucrative client for her that she really had to look at because none of the staff wanted to work with this person. And so we're looking at these platinum and gold customers in our map to create stability. We want to look at the prospects as somebody who has potential. So no prospect that you have until they buy can be higher than that. And then this other information really tells you is you sort of want to stop right here. You don't want to go down to this level. These are a big X. Just try to avoid those. I'm just going to mark those out, and I'm going to pretend that those don't exist because we don't want to deal with those people at all. The bronze, walk in the door. You don't know what they're going to be. But if you can concentrate in your sales map in identifying these people, you have much better solutions that your marketing and people can use in terms of creating materials and in terms of creating message. Now, the platinum profile that I talked about that goes in that chart has to have many things. And again, I'm not going to teach you how to do these. I'm simply kind of giving you a list. And we tend to think in terms of demographics. Where do they live and what language do they speak and how big is the company and how many employees do they have. But we're really looking at, because we're looking at a person, we're looking at behaviors and we're looking at attitudes, interests, opinions, and values, etc. But this last one is the one that probably, particularly if you're doing business to business, is the biggest one because there are huge risks that every business does to buy from you, even buying from you on a repeat basis. We just heard that the economy has shrank 2%, so people are getting nervous. We have been in our business through 6 downturns. I will tell you, living in a boom and bust state like Texas, is we do get used to it. That's what happens, and you just live with it. But as a product manager and a product marketer, you certainly want to hedge your bets. I wanted to put in old Wimpy here. That's little Wimpy here. Some of you may be Popeye fans. He is always wanting to borrow money from you today or to buy a hamburger so that he can pay you tomorrow. So this is just a little link to a really fun little YouTube about Wimpy the Moocher. So stay away when you're looking at your map and you've got it mapped out and you find people who are moochers, is those the people, no matter how you love them or how much your owner or your tech people think that those are the best people around, is you need to get rid of them. That's the only way that you can make this a more profitable opportunity for you. We want to use this sales map to cut costs, and this is how I compute the cost, and it's really looking at all of the expenses and then all of the values. And these are 3 of the main values that help me look at and help my clients know who is the best client for them in terms of platinum and who is the worst in terms of radioactive waste. If you only do those 2 in terms of your sales mapping, you're going to be way ahead of the game. I have a client who is from Mexico, and we have been looking at different kinds of costs for him. He's looking at doing some business with the government, and it's a very extensive product that has all kinds of pieces to it. And the key for him is that there are many related expenses because this is going to be a very expensive project, and so it's going to have to go for bid. So the question is, in terms of his sales map, is this really a platinum profile customer, even though it would be great to do business with a very large city? Is it too much? And particularly because he is a small business, although he has colleagues in Chile and Argentina, et cetera, can he really pull it off? What we're really trying to talk about here is creating the buying rings. The buying rings are those map people that hang together. So if we can attract them, they will bring others like themselves, and we can make sure that our message is correct. So here's a scenario that I wanted to play for you. So we have a couple of people in platinum and one in gold and a couple in silver, because we don't know really where they are, but they're pretty good. Then we have maybe a couple in bronze, and we have only one in the radioactive waste category. So what you're trying to do is something just very similar to what I have. This is a pretty good sales map in terms of how well things are going. Things are pretty balanced, and what we need to decide is what we do with Nina and Ben. Do they go up? Do they go down? And we want to try to get rid of Tammy's tailoring as soon as possible. Here's another one. We have only one gold. We have no platinum. We have a lot of people that people don't know. We, again, only have one in radioactive waste, so we're doing okay. But we do need to do something with these people, and that using that kind of a process as a sales map tells your sales staff or your marketing people is let's reach out to these people. Let's see if we can move them either up or down so that we know who we're dealing with. So this is the kind of thing that you can learn from one of these. Now this one you can tell this company is in trouble. Look at all of the people they have in radioactive waste. They don't have anybody that they consider platinum or gold or that has earned the right to be in platinum and gold. They have this one person who might be pretty good, but they've got a lot of bronze. And so there's something wrong with the message, something wrong with the marketing, and it's a very quick graphical way to represent that. When we look at sales mapping, we're looking at why people buy. And so we're going to go down the road in terms of the next map, which has to do with the customer's perspective and where they are on the map. And people buy because they're looking for just right, whatever is just right in terms of what they want. And either they are dissatisfied or they're seeking an opportunity or they want to maintain the status quo. I'm a person who drinks Dr. Pepper. Dr. Pepper started in Texas. We have a big museum in Waco, but actually the last remaining honest-to-goodness Dr. Pepper facility was in a little town called Dublin, Texas. And over the years, the man who got the original franchise for Dr. Pepper continued to make it the original way. And the technology may have passed him by, but the recipe was very special. And so those of us who are purists love the Dublin Dr. Pepper. He finally, or the family finally lost their ability to protect their ability to present the Dr. Pepper as Dr. Pepper, so they had to change the name in order to continue to provide the product. So now I drink something called Doppelganger, which is Dr. Pepper by another name. The other part of why people buy is because something in this area is acceptable. It could be price, it could be quality, it could be time, it could be any two of the three. And when we're looking at doing the sales map for them, what we're trying to do is identify where they're coming from and what is it that they need to be acceptable so we get to the just right. So do you know what your customers want? If you talk to your salespeople or if you have done surveys or other kinds of things, maybe you do know. And that's going to be a part of how you put together your product and service mix and really know who you're aimed at. But where you're trying to get to is to look at how much willingness and how much desire they have to actually make a change or to stay with you. I have a good friend who wrote a book called Buying with Integrity. She also has written some books called Buying Facilitation. Her name is Sharon Drew Morgan. And she talks about the problem that's related to basically product space. And so I'm not talking here about the sales staff or the product managers and product marketers solving the problem, but knowing kind of what the level is here. And so if they have a lot of willingness, like I have, to drink Dr. Pepper, but and a lot of desire, you've got a customer for life. If you've got somebody who's got a lot of desire to have your product, perhaps it's a GPS system, but you're dealing with people who are contractors who might as well be Luddites. They hate dealing with technology, is they may desire it, but they're not willing to go to bat for it. So they're really kind of more maybe up here. They're and maybe they're a good customer for you, and maybe they're not. But the point here is you're going to take these pieces of information we've been talking about to create this. And what this does is it goes through the steps that a customer does in order to make a decision to buy or rebuy from you. And when you are putting this together as a map, you're going to put in the customer name next to the ones that are the group that you're going after, whether it's the highest value, accessible, or lucrative. All right, so here's an example. So here are the steps, and we put in some names of some companies, and it shows the sales and marketing team and anyone who's doing production kind of where they are. So when you look at this, is what it also tells you is that we've got some holes. So this person here, Jose F. at A company, never really determined that he had a need. He just sort of fell into setting a goal, or he was given a goal maybe by his boss or by regulation. And so he didn't decide he needed it. Somebody else decided that. And when you look at this as a map, it tells you in your focus in terms of sales marketing and product management is, how do I fill in the holes? How do I make sure that they do that? Because what happens is if you don't let them do this and you don't have them make sure that they've gone through steps 1 through 5, when they get to the 6th decision, I do another program called Customers Gone Wild. And that's because I used to call it something else. And I had somebody who attended one of the sessions I did, and what you're talking about, she said, is customers gone wild. They go crazy. They disappear. They run away. They don't answer your phone calls. And it's simply because, at least as far as I found it in doing this for 20 plus years, is they didn't go through all the steps they needed to get down here. And this is also what Sharon Drew talks about in the research that she's done, is that they have to go through their own buying facility or buying continuum before they're ready to make a decision. Then it's important as product managers and marketers is you don't stop there. It's not once the handoff happens. It's not once the decision is made. Is because this is where you also have the opportunity to basically keep them for life if you want them, or you have a way to get them to connect with you and stay connected and bring other people to you. But if you don't have them mapped out and you don't know what they haven't done, is you may rush to this point, or you may be telling, or your salespeople might be telling you that they're ready to make a decision. I know they're going to buy immediately. I worked with another tech company, and when I attended meetings and worked with the sales staff, they said, "Oh, well, we know where that this person is going to buy in 5 days." Well, I kept working with the team leader to say, you need to get them to really look at where that person is, because week after week they kept saying that this person was ready to make a decision. And the more that I said to them, you need to make sure they've gone through the steps, finally the sales manager had to step in and basically tell this hotshot salesperson is that he didn't believe him anymore because he kept promising and he couldn't show and demonstrate that this potential client had done all these steps. Now, it may seem like an odd thing to find out. How do you find out? Well, again, this is not a program on how to do that. There is a way to do that without being, interrogative, being an interrogator, but you do need to know. And when we look at it from the sales perspective, there are 7 additional steps. And so we're looking at then creating a map for them. This is the map that's related to the sales team. So you'll see that there are steps here, again, most valuable, accessible, and lucrative. And we're going to notice 2 things. One is that even though 7 and 7 are equal, the customer and the person who's doing the sales, is they don't fit together. In other words, the first step for determining need doesn't just necessarily correspond to this pre-qualify. And so you can't say that each one corresponds to the 7, but what you can do with this kind of a map is to see where you are in terms of the product management cycle or product marketing cycle, so that you know what has been done and what still needs to be done. And if you notice, for this C. Rodriguez, is somebody decided that C. Rodriguez at AC from Spain would be a good, most valuable client to go after. They made an initial contact with them, but then they jumped right down in terms of doing demos. They never really got out the parts that really are what I consider the parts of marketing, which have to do with prioritization, they have to do with benefit analysis, they have to do with all kinds of things. And so the salesperson thinks they're here, but they're not, because they have never really voiced to the product manager or product marketer or salesperson what are the issues. And this is the other kind of map that in sales mapping will help you make sure things don't fall through the cracks. That's something that we see a lot. So we're now down to really talking a little bit more about location intelligence. How does it fit into what you're talking about in terms of making these maps? I showed you an example. The key here in terms of creating the maps and spending the time and making the decisions is to give you a visual representation, not just a list. Certainly there are programs like Salesforce and other kinds of products that are out, ACT, that give you a representation, but they don't, in my opinion, give you enough information that is based on reality. And I want to talk first about localization. I didn't know for sure where most of you were going to be focusing on. So I want to talk about localization as a very good example of a map. This is a map of Austin, Texas, of our downtown area. And if you notice, there's a river that goes through, and it is now called Lady Bird Lake, after Lady Bird Johnson. And then there's another little creek that goes up. And then our streets tend to line up pretty well. And then we have a big road, which is called I-35 or I-35. And the reason that I bring this up is because it's a very good example of what you need to be thinking about in terms of your map. Because for when you deal with a real map like this one does, is you do have these barriers. For us in Austin, this river is a barrier. So in terms of product marketing and product management, is the people on this side will buy on this side. The people on the south side, they buy on the south side. And some of you may be familiar with our, it's called SoCo. It's a very special sales district in the Austin area. What most people don't realize, unless you've been here a while, as I have, is that this road is also a big barrier. It's possible to go east and west, but there's something about this natural barrier of an interstate that, again, we have people who buy on this side and people on that side, but they don't normally cross over. Again, what a sales map does is if you actually go through the process of creating something like what I'm going to show you here, is that you can actually see what's around you. This is a GPS map. It is showing these all are what are called census block groups, so all these colors. And what the colors do is they show you certain characteristics that you have put in. This information is available from the Census Bureau, and what you can see a little bit on the side is the filters that are put in. And this has to do with consumers, so it's looking at house value and things of that sort. But what it tells the sales force and what it tells the marketing people is where should we put our emphasis. We're about to get Google Fiber in Austin. So for somebody who's doing something that is IT related, where you want to know where the people who are most likely to be early adopters to go in, this kind of location intelligence map can be very, very useful. So coming from the more general maps like I was talking about, the customer map, the process map for buying continuation and continue in terms of what the customer buys and how they buy it. And from a sales map, you can go all the way up to something like this. This is commonly used in the direct-to-door industry. If you've ever gotten anything on your door that was a flyer or a product sample, that's really how they set up what are the target areas. And so if you drew a circle around this little star, you would know all you needed to know about the customers in those areas. And you can draw special kind of shapes and things of that sort. My point to you is you may not want to get that far into it, but if you're dealing with those kinds of opportunities where there is a rationale to really know more about the businesses, because you can do this for businesses as well, there is a reason to go this far. If any of you have ever traveled to Japan, you may have seen this done in their business districts. There's a very famous street called Kobayashi Street, and it is row upon row, basically cheek to jowl, as my mother would say, of these restaurant supply companies. And if you were doing a product or a software for those companies, it might be helpful to you to be able to send people basically up and down that street, either electronically or in person. And so those kinds of things do occur in Europe. There is actually another place like that, actually in Houston, Texas, a little town just south of Houston called Kemah, Texas. And the way that Kemah is laid out, if you have a boat, there are all of these boat repair places. Again, if you were selling something that was a technology for companies that dealt with boats of all kinds, primarily big boats, because we're right on the Gulf in Houston, it would be helpful to you to have a map like this, to have the information that you could put in place, or if you already had it historically, you could simply upload it. Again, this is kind of the creme de la creme if you were doing this kind of thing. But you can certainly do the other pieces in terms of mapping the sales process to make sure that you're doing what you need to do and what you want to do as sales and product marketers and product managers. So what are the next steps? We're almost done. We've done all the things that we talked about in terms of what are the kinds of maps. So now it's your turn to really focus on this platinum person and to really use that to set up your own location intelligence program with demographic information, with psychographic information. Again, things that you may have or things you may be able to buy. There's a company called Wishlist Direct. There's another company called Willow Bend. There are many places you can get a lot of information, again, both on businesses and on consumers, that can help you put together a more intense map like we were talking about. But the main thing is you want to set up the system. You want to keep it up to date, and then you want to share it with all the people who would be involved. And I said it works with everybody, and that's because the person who answers your phone needs to know, is this a platinum profile person who's calling, or is this basically a radioactive waste customer? I worked with a client many years ago that did translation services, and the way that the gentleman started the company was doing translations. I don't mean to pick on Dell, but he was doing it for Dell originally, and then he began to expand and add new products and add new clients, and went from basically a one-person operation working with me up to 32, and then working in all kinds of countries. And one of the things that happened was that we discovered in terms of doing the mapping is that the way he had set his system up in terms of product management and marketing was Dell was the key. And if Dell wanted it, everybody had to have it. And that worked for a while until people who were not Dell basically put up a fuss and put up their feet and said, no, I don't want to change. I want you to do the translation services the way I want them. And so part of doing this mapping system allows you to know when you've got processes in place that you need to really think critically about. If you're going to be a one-trick pony with one big client, and sometimes that's the way it works. I have a client, a chemical company, and basically they had only 6 potential sales worldwide. It had to be according to a specific way in which the labs had to be set up. But most of us have more people that we want to deal with. And again, remember, I'm emphasizing people and not businesses, even though most of you are doing business to business. So what that meant was that for the company that had 6 is our processes, our operations had to work exactly the way that that client and all 5 others needed it. But when we were dealing with the client who was dealing with Dell, is we needed to really set up a mapping system for Platinum Profile customers that were Dell size and that were stepped down in size or had a different focus. They were only focused on one country, or they were dealing with a very sophisticated technology, or they were ramping up a technology in a developing country. So this mapping system allows you to share those findings with other people in your company to make sure that you're not offering something in a way that doesn't work. And again, the most important thing I think about sales mapping is to help you really be able to justify getting rid of the least valuable prospects and customers. I really feel that what you want to do is to, if you have any historical information, is to map both your existing customers and prospects and previous customers and the prospects that didn't buy from you. Why didn't they? Can you tell by the questions you ask and where you place them in terms of the buying continuum and in terms of the marketing, the sales map, is can you tell what happened? Because if you can change that, you can get more customers and you can keep them from going wild or running away. I did want to give you a little article that I think is kind of interesting. It was written in 2011. It's a post, but it's talking more about location intelligence. I don't think location intelligence gets enough play. Again, we know a lot more about business intelligence, but this location intelligence can tell you a lot. I have a client, and I stepped in as their sales manager. And one of the things that we can tell, even though in some of the things on our website we can't tell exactly who they are because we want them to have a sense of privacy, we can certainly get an idea of what state they came from. And for us, that's critical because we do have one of those most successful kinds of clients bases. In other words, there are only a certain number of people who could use this. And so by looking at what the location is of the computer, we have a pretty good idea of who they might be, and that's a very helpful thing. If you would like a copy of the sales option chart, that's a big chart with all the different possibilities, the green and white one, please email it to me. I'm happy to send it to you. Again, it wasn't meant for you to be able to read as a slide. It was, as much as anything, it was to show you, oh my gosh, look at all the options, because the whole point about sales mapping is reducing those options. We're just now at the point where we can take questions, and I wanted to put this slide up there for more information, but I'm going to ask Stacy to give me a hand. So I'm looking at a question from someone who said, what do steps 3 and 4 mean? And I apologize, I don't know exactly which one we're talking about. So I'm going to go back a minute, Stacy. I'm going to go back to one of the earlier slides and see if I can help, no matter which one they're talking about.
Right there is where you're at. Perfect.
This is where I am. Okay. So the answer to that question is marketing is really where you have an opportunity to get them to tell you a lot. And it's important before you get to the demo that you've gotten them to talk and think and prepare so that you are hearing what they're saying to you in terms of potential problems. And the problems may not be anything that you can solve. One of Sharon Drew's favorite stories is about somebody who would not take a free computer. And when she called back to find out why, she was told because of Dad. And when she pushed farther, it turned out that the man whose father had started the company hates computers. And as long as he was alive and as long as he was part of the company, there would never be a computer in it. Now that's been a number of years, but that's the kind of things that in your process you should be getting out. What are the things you can't change, but you make the people who are potential customers or prospects think about and tell you, so that you really have a much better idea of where they really are and what they might be able to do if they can solve the problem. Again, I don't believe in solution selling, but I do believe in getting people to think critically about what it would take to make those changes. So Stacy, what other kinds of questions do we have?
Excellent. Here's one, Jan. Someone's asking, does the whole sales team need to use sales mapping to make it worth the effort?
Yes, and Stacy, that's a really good question, because it starts again with a decision maker saying, this is what we're going to do, and really leading the charge. When you can certainly have different people use it, but what you get is inconsistencies because people rank people differently. I worked with a technology company that produced a medical device, and when I talked to the staff who were dealing with customers from a customer service perspective, well, they all had stories to tell about this customer and that customer, and some of them liked that customer and some of them didn't. And so when asked to simply rank them, just to do that as an exercise, is the people that they put at the platinum level or at the gold level is once the sales manager and I went back and looked at how much value, and what we're really talking about here is lifetime value over a certain period of time, that these best customers that some people liked provided to the company, is they really were down in the bronze level. But people like them as people. And when we're doing business, we do want to like the people that we have as customers, but we do want to create consistency and repeatability. And maybe that client is not ready to buy your technology yet. Maybe they're on the way, but they're not there yet. Or maybe they'll buy something just because they like you, which means that they probably won't do a lot of referrals. But you got your money, and in some cultures it's very hard to say no sometimes. So you'll get a little buy thinking, oh, well, this is the beginning of great things, and no, it's just because they felt sorry, they wanted to get you out of their hair, they had some money to spend. I've seen government do this a lot, is they had money that they needed to spend because it was in the budget. And so they took some chances on things. But really, they did it because they had the money, not because they had the need.
Right, exactly. I could see it being a really good team effort with a product manager or product marketing person helping to define what those different levels of customers would look like, and then the individual salespeople really mapping their individual prospects back into those areas.
You bet. And I'll bet, Stacy, that you could tell us about some program that Pragmatic Marketing offers that would help somebody through a training process of doing that if team building is not a strong point. I went into a company not too long ago that worked in the education market, and they were having a problem with competition, and they were dealing with some other issues related to clients who were bringing them, things that they wanted to complain about. And so how did you handle that? So is there a program at Pragmatic to help a team become more of a team?
Yeah, absolutely. Really, our whole curriculum is focused around all of the things that we need to do to make sure that we understand the market, our users, our buyers, and their problems. If I was a person who was working in a role where I was responsible for enabling the sales team, I would probably start with something in our curriculum like foundations, possibly focus, and our market class. You can see all those on the website, but the combination of foundations and market looks at how do you understand the market, and then how do you use what you learned from the market to do that sales enablement and to plan for your marketing overall.
And that's a great way to do that. And I want to just take a minute to kind of talk about this one a little bit. Sometimes if you're a product manager or marketer, or on a team is the salespeople want to go out and sell, sell, sell. They have to make 10 calls or 40 calls or whatever, is they don't want to take the time to pre-qualify themselves, and they don't really know what that means. And it really is targeting. And part of the sales map is allowing the product management and marketers to really help the sales team and other people, including the top management, really pre-qualify who should we go after before this initial contact is made, instead of just taking a list and just starting down it. It's really doing some sort of a pre-contact. It's not really trying to get a meeting, which is what the initial contact is. This is really making some big decisions, some what we call big gritter decisions, before you spend any time on a message or on a positioning, et cetera. And then you can start down the road. And the last thing, as I said, is really making sure that you retain and upsell them, or you get rid of the bad ones. Because everybody makes mistakes. You think they're going to be a great customer, and they don't.
Exactly. And as a product manager or product marketing person, if you help define what a pre-qualified customer would look like, well, you're helping your sales team out. I mean, there's this. It's pretty easy to look at the sales team and go, oh, they're just selling to anybody they can have contact with. Well, if they don't know what your preferred type of customer is, they are going to sell to anybody they can talk into buying the product. And you might end up with a whole bunch of what you're calling that toxic waste. So the better we can define, at the pre-qualify stage, who do we want to say yes to and who do we want to say no to?
You bet. Those radioactive wastes will get in there. And sometimes they are a client or a potential client that has a big name, and you really want to have them on your list. But as a product marketer, you know that this product is not where they are and not where they're coming from, and they will simply waste your time. And so a lot of this is really time-saving as well as space-saving. You don't want anybody to fail as a product marketer. You don't want anybody to make mistakes and cost them their job. And using some sort of a mapping system where you can really see the relationships. One of the things that this can't show as graphically as I would like it is there a relationship between this person and this person? And part of really looking at that and where they are is looking for those relationships, and this person, C. Rodriguez, gets more points, is more valuable because they brought in Thong and they brought in GK. And when you have names and you can say, okay, this is where we are, we know what the next step is. It really takes goal setting and puts it down into very specific things that we can all understand. And when we all understand, there's less chance for going off on tangents and less chance for these big mistakes. I really have enjoyed being with everybody today. I don't know, Stacy, if we have time for one more question or if we have one, but if not, I do want to say thank you so much to Pragmatic. I will see you in August when we do Product Camp Austin, and we have people who come from all over the country and all over the world, so I hope if anybody's interested, you will look up. It is a 501c3. It's an unconference, which means it's free. It's a great opportunity, and thank you, Pragmatic, for being a sponsor of this one and the ones all over the world.
Thank you, Jan, and we really appreciate you being here today. We've actually worked through all of the questions, so we'll just wrap it up here. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and especially, Jan, we really appreciate the time you've put into this. And until next month, we'll see you then.
Thank you.